Om Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsachanuramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Well, we are back, and for the final talk of this retreat, the result of all of this. What is the result of Vedanta? The title of the talk says it all, Living in Freedom. Arjuna, in the second chapter of the Gita, asks a question. And that's what we are going to deal with. Second chapter is probably the most important chapter in the entire Gita, which has 18 chapters. Because in this chapter, whatever Krishna has to teach, he teaches. And then Arjuna has questions, and then Krishna provides additional details and fills in the teachings, as it were, over the remaining 16 chapters. It's a tendency, it's a style of writing of these ancient masters, that they would first give you the highest teaching, and then sort of look at you. Did it work? No? Didn't? Okay, we'll step down. And did that work? No? Then we'll further details, step down a little bit. Because they don't want to waste your time. You get it, you're enlightened, go. Tata. If you're not, we'll spend more time with you until you are enlightened. So, all that has to be said, Atma Jnana, the realization that you are Sat, pure existence, that has been taught in the second chapter. At the end of the second chapter, Arjuna asks this question, suppose I get enlightened, what will I be like? What's it like being enlightened? So it's a beautiful question, and in one of the most famous sections of the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna answers that question. But before I go there, I just remembered a couple of things which I'll share with you from the last presentation. There was a question yesterday, and today also a similar subject arose. Why at all did Brahman create all of this? Somebody asked, you speak of the shining ocean of existence. That sounds so nice. Brahman could have remained as the shining ocean of existence. Why all these names and forms? Why all these men and women and animals and plants and planets and stars? What further purpose is served? Well, one is that Brahman, to experience itself, it requires names and forms. Now what I remembered was a story about the teacher with whom I mentioned in the last session, Tapovan Maharaj. He was a very austere, non-dualist Swami living in the Himalayas. He passed away sometime in the 50s or 60s, I think. So there's a story about him and Swami Chinmayananda of the Chinmay mission. And Swami Chinmayananda has written his reminiscences. The story answers this. When they were reading the Mandukya Upanishad, Tapovan Swami was teaching the monks studying under him the Mandukya Upanishad, which is the most powerful of the Upanishads, the smallest, only 12 mantras, and the most powerful. Again, the style of teaching is, if you get the highest teaching first, that's it. We don't want to waste your time. So, there is a story that Hanuman asks Rama, how do I get enlightenment? And Rama says, read the Mandukya Upanishad. Actually, it's there. The story says, Mandukyam ekam evalam mumukshunam vimuktaye. What does it mean? For those who are seeking after liberation, that one text, Mandukya Upanishad, is enough to give you liberation. Suppose it doesn't work, and then he gives a list of 108 Upanishads. It doesn't work, then you come back here. We have got a whole library for you. So, when they were studying this Mandukya Upanishad, at that time, it seems the Swami, the Chinmayananda, had a similar doubt. I understand the infinite existence, Sat, or pure consciousness, Chaitanya, or the same thing which is Ananda, Satchidananda. That's perfect. But what's all this? What's the point served in all of this? And so he asked this question, and the Swami, the teacher, did not reply, kept quiet. Next day in the class, when the class was going on, remember it's the Himalayas, it's very cold, and the Ganges is flowing about 40-50 feet below, in a gorge below them. The Swami suddenly said to Swami, the teacher said to Swami Chinmayananda, "You, go and get me some water. I want some water to drink." The Swami was a little taken aback. He writes in his reminiscences that it's cold, and usually the teacher does not ask for water at this time. Anyway, he takes a glass and goes down to the river, and he scoops up a glass full of Ganges water and comes back. And the teacher, Tapovan Maharaj, immediately becomes furious. "What is this? A glass of water. What did I ask you to bring?" "You asked for water." "Yes, I asked for water. What is this glass?" And Chinmayanji says, "I was thunderstruck. All my questions have been answered at that time. About the formless water, you cannot get it without a container. This pure existence consciousness bliss, which is the pure subject, cannot be experienced unless an objective element is introduced there." Go back to the story. God wants to play hide and seek, but there's nobody to play with. Now how can God play hide and seek? Where will God get playmates? So God decides to pretend not to be God. He pretends to be space and time and causation and matter and energy and life, and evolves into all of us, and so God can play hide and seek with us. Only problem is God got too good at this game and totally forgot himself, and now God is suffering. So now God has to be led back to, that's all of us, we have to be led back to our real nature. That's one story. I had a similar experience, a similar teaching once. Another teacher in the Himalayas, whom I learnt a lot from, who passed away a few years ago. The first time I actually met him, one of our senior Swamis had told me that, "Would you like to meet this teacher?" I said, "Oh, fine, I'll go with you. I've heard so much about him." I've heard so much about him, so I'll go with you. And we went to meet this teacher, who was a very senior teacher of Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta. And he was sitting in this ashram, I still remember, wearing only a loincloth and sitting in the corner on the floor. When I went and bowed down, without asking a single question, he said this. He said a few things which I noted down, but among them he said this. "Look, there is electricity all around in all these wires." That room had electricity. And there was a bulb and there was a fan. There's electricity in those wires, but how will you know unless the light shines and the fan goes round and round? That's all. It was enough for me. You see, a pure subjective existence consciousness bliss, if ever you want to experience it, it has to be reflected in things that exist. Pure existence in itself, how do you know? But things that exist, okay, we understand. Pure consciousness, how do you know? But conscious experience of seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, thinking, okay, we experience it. So it has to be reflected in name and form. That was the teaching. It's the same teaching. Same teaching. Now, Arjuna asked this question. Very beautiful question. Arjuna vacha sthita pragyasya ka bhasha samadhisthasya keshava sthitadhi kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. How would you define or describe an enlightened person? And the word that Arjuna uses for enlightened person, sthita prajna, literally translates into steady in wisdom, steady in knowledge. Now connect it to what we studied yesterday. Yesterday we studied that the practice is to continuously be aware of the isness in all our experiences. Remember what we studied? Shankaracharya pointed out, in all our experiences there are two aspects. One is name and form, the other one is isness. Look around you. Try to see the world through this new Vedantic glasses. I see people. People exist. And the practice was notice the existence, not so much the people. You will find a sameness, one unchanging, immortal existence everywhere. It's like saying, notice the water in the waves. Not what kind of wave is it, big, small, surf, bubbles, no. Notice the water, notice the gold in the ornaments. That's the practice. And the word used in that verse, in the 16th verse of the 2nd chapter, was Tattva Darshi. Tattva means reality, Darshi means seer. Become a seer of reality. Become a seer of existence, isness. That teaching which the Swami gave us, that X-ray vision, let your vision penetrate through, like the X-ray penetrates through skin and blood and flesh and to the bones themselves, to the very bones. Similarly, our vision gets stuck with the name and form. Friend, enemy, good, bad, nice, unpleasant. Name and form. Penetrate to the name and form, focus on the existence, isness. So the seer of existence, literally the seer of existence. And it's nothing impossible, it's always available to us. Our minds sort of skitter away into the names and forms. We have to bring it back to the isness. As you bring it back to the isness, the problem there will be, it's not so difficult to understand. Your next question will be, I see what you mean, Swami, but the real problem is to stay there. Is to keep your vision there. Keep your awareness, your focus, become steady in it. When you become steady as a seer of isness, is exactly what Arjuna is asking. Sthita pragya means one who is steady as the seer of isness. That's the precise definition of enlightenment. In the path of devotion, in the path of duality, one would say one who is accustomed or one who practices seeing God in everything. In the path of duality, you worship Christ or Krishna or God in any form. And one who tries to feel the existence of God in everything, that's the dual path, dualistic path. That in a more philosophical form is what is being said here. Look at the word, sthita pragya. Sthita, established, steady. Pragya, wisdom. What wisdom? What wisdom? The wisdom of seeing the isness in everything. The pure existence everywhere, inside and outside. So, I want you to appreciate the precision of the question. One who is established in seeing the one isness everywhere. What's that person like? How does life change for that person? What is an enlightened person? How is it different from us? And the way he asked the question is, I see the enlightened person in two states. One is, sometimes they're absorbed in a spiritual ecstasy. They seem to forget the world, nay, even their own bodies. So that state is called samadhi. You see it in the Gospel of Ramakrishna. Many times in a day, Ramakrishna is absorbed in samadhi. And he forgets the external world, forgets his own body, the existence of people around him. So that's one state where the enlightened person is forgetful of the world and absorbed in the reality, in the isness. The other state is when the enlightened person comes out of that state and interacts with us, talks with us, walks with us, eats and moves around. Now Arjuna's question is, of these two states, what's the enlightened person like in samadhi? One. What's the enlightened person like when he is out of that samadhi and moving around with us? How is it different from us? So the questions, he divides 4 questions. 1 question about the samadhi state and 3 questions about out of samadhi, interacting with all of us. Samadhistasya Keshava, O Krishna, when the enlightened person in samadhi, describe that person. And when he's not in samadhi, when he's talking, Kim Prabhasheta, how does this person converse with us? How is it different from the rest of us? Kim Asita, how does he sit? Kim Vrajeta, how does he walk? Basically the idea is how in the daily, day-to-day activities, how is this person different from the rest of us? What difference will it make to me if I become enlightened? On the surface they seem to be the same thing. Whether Ramana Maharshi or Ramakrishna or Vivekananda, they ate, they walked, they laughed, they talked, they even appeared to get angry and so on. All of that seems to be quite similar to all of us. How is it different? That is the question. I'm reminded of a Zen story. There's small things in life that makes a difference. That one should notice. The two students who went to a Zen master, and they studied under him for some time. And the teacher would not teach them anything. He just made them work in the Zen studio, in the hermitage, the cleaning and cooking and washing and all that. After some time, one of the students got impatient. He said, "Where are the Zen lessons? I don't like this. He's just exploiting us. If he doesn't teach us, start teaching us, I'm going to go and look for a different master. What about you?" The other student said, "I'm satisfied." "How can you be satisfied? He didn't teach us anything. I came here to learn Zen and he's not teaching us anything. No classes in Zen. How are you satisfied? What are you getting? What did you come here for?" And the second student says, "I came here to see how the master ties his shoelaces." In the little things of life, Zen is more revealed than in lectures on Zen. So he asked this question, how is it different? Now Krishna answers. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Blessed Lord said, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmana tushta stita prajnastaduchyate. First, a person is said to be of settled or steady wisdom, enlightened, when that dwelling on the isness has become fixed, permanent, effortless. When all the desires rooted in the heart, kama, when all of them are totally given up, when all desires, all seeking after things of the world, seeking happiness through pleasure and success and money, or through conventional religion, all of those pursuits are given up. Now if you say all those pursuits are given up, then where does this person get satisfaction? Tripti, satisfaction. Where does this person get satisfaction? The next line says, Atmanyevatmana tushtaha. That person gets satisfaction in that inner self, which is ever revealed to him. To his vision, that inner self, Atman, Sat Chit Ananda, is always available. And that is the mine, inexhaustible mine of satisfaction. If you have got the ocean of nectar in front of you, would you turn around and dig a well, try to get some water from the ground? No. The infinity is available to you all the time, effortlessly. Why would you seek it here and there? There's a verse in the Gita which says, when the flood waters are everywhere, when it's available all around, why would a person go to a well or a tap or anywhere? It's water all around. In the same way, when one realizes Brahman, sees Satchidananda inside and outside, everywhere, all the time available, where would that person go to seek happiness? It's always available to that person. So one who is completely content in this Satchidananda does not require other avenues for satisfaction. These are other avenues for satisfaction. These are required because we are not content. Why are we not content? Because we find ourselves unfulfilled, incomplete. Vedanta says, actually you are complete. You are that infinite existence, consciousness, bliss. You do not know it. Not knowing it, you consider yourself to be unfulfilled. You see this little body bundle of flesh and bone and think, I am this. The moment I think I am this, I am tied to the 101 demands of the flesh and the mind. And I run after that. Not knowing my real nature is not this. I have nothing at all to do with this cage which I inhabit. Now, in Shankaracharya uses this equation. He says, avidya kama karma. Good, we'll leave only moksha. We have made our choice. And wipe this out. Shankaracharya says, this is an equation. He often uses this. Avidya kama karma. What does it mean? Avidya means ignorance. And that leads to desire. And that leads to karma, action. What it means is, not knowing our infinite nature, we experience this very limited body-mind, identify ourselves with it, and there is born desire. I want this and I want that for my fulfillment. As a kid, I want this toy or that toy for my fulfillment. If I get this, I'm perfectly happy. If I get that Xbox or something, that's it. I don't have any more desires in life. Well, for the time being you don't. Very, very soon you will. And then, as we grow up, money, achievement, relationships, all of that, trying to fill up a hole which will never be filled. They're saying the God-shaped hole. God-shaped hole can only be filled by God, nothing else. So we keep trying to fill it up because this desire, we're trying to fill it up, and trying to do that we get into the cycle of karma. We set into motion forces, powerful forces, cause and effect, that gives rise to birth and death, the cycle of birth and death. And that's how we are caught in samsara. The only way is to go to the root and destroy ignorance. The only way one can destroy ignorance is through knowledge. Knowledge of what? Knowledge of the infinity already existing within us, already available to us. Once you know that, then all those pursuits will not be needed. A question might come here. So, ignorance leads to desire and desire leads to action. If ignorance is gone and you become enlightened, so will there be no more, there's no more desire, but there will be no more action then? Will a person stop acting? There will be no more action born of desire. But the person can still go on acting for the welfare of others. The person can go on teaching, the person can go on for the welfare of the world, all the great spiritual masters of humanity. Whether it's Krishna teaching Arjuna or Jesus or Buddha, whoever. None of them were acting for their personal gain. They had absolutely nothing to gain. In this book itself, in the Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, I have nothing to gain in the three worlds, yet I do not desist from action. I go on acting for the welfare of others. So, karma can continue after enlightenment, but that karma will be very different. It will not be born of karma, will not be born of personal desire. Then Krishna says, all the other pursuits are rooted out, are left behind by this person who has realized the infinitude of the self. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Because this person finds complete satisfaction in the reality within. In the Taittiriya Upanishad it is said, whole of Vedanta is summed up in this way. Brahma vidapnoti param. The knower of Brahman attains the ultimate. And we have three questions. What is Brahman? How do you know Brahman? And what do you mean? Importantly, what do you mean by the ultimate? What is achieved by the knower of Brahman? That's what Arjuna's question here is. What is enlightenment? What do you get out of it? And the answer is given in the Upanishad in the next few lines. It says, first question, what is Brahman? Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Brahman is infinite existence and consciousness. I have a whole talk about this. It's called Defining God. So I refer you to that. It's very interesting. The second question is, how do we know Brahman? Yo Veda Nihitam Parame Vyoman. Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyoman. One who realizes Brahman in the sacred space of the heart. It's a poetic way of saying one who realizes Brahman as one's own self, inner self. I am Brahman. How do you realize Brahman? Not as that is Brahman, or some people in the modern world, will use language of physics. So, Swami, is Brahman time, or is Brahman superstrings, or is Brahman the quark, or the God particle or something? That's an object out there. You have to realize Brahman as I am Brahman. That's how you realize Brahman. So, and then what's the result of all of this? So ashnute sarvan kaman saha brahmana vipaschiteti. That one who is enlightened, who realizes that I am Brahman, enjoys the fulfillment of all possible desires at once. The fulfillment of all possible desires at once. All the desires of the heart are completely fulfilled at once. You will say, wait a minute. I want the latest Corvette, I want the latest iPhone, and a vacation in Hawaii, and a monster chocolate chip cookie. So, will I get a package, all of this all together? Is that the enlightenment? No, 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 no. What is meant is, by all these desires, what you are pursuing, the happiness that you are pursuing through all of this, from chocolate chip cookie to the car, to the gadget and everything, to relationships, whatever, all that is meant for happiness. That happiness, permanent, unchanging, infinite, without limit, you will get. You see, our desire is to exist forever. If you ask, you want to live, you'll all say yes. How long do you want to live? Well, theoretically, forever. I know maybe I cannot, but forget what you cannot. If you could, how long would you want to live? Well, forever. And would you want to live unconscious or conscious? Consciously, of course. I want to be aware. How much do you want to be aware? Well, infinitely, without limit, if I could. And would you want to live aware and living forever but miserable? No, no, no. I want to be happy, joyous. How much happy? Well, if you give me the option, I would be happy without limit. Without limit. I want to live without limit. I want to be aware without limit. And I want to be happy without limit. Do you see? Sat, Chit, Ananda. A young man became a monk. His friends asked him, why do you want to become a monk? Why do you want to give up everything? He said, oh, no, 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 I don't want to give up everything. I want to become a monk precisely because I want everything. My desires are not limited. I want the entire universe. I want everything without limit. That's why I'm going to become a monk. It's only when desires are limited that you pursue specific things. But everything. I want to be one with everything. So when one gets that and is established in that, then where will one seek satisfaction? All the desires are fulfilled as it were, because that perfect happiness is available. Then Krishna goes on. Dukkheshu anudvigna mana sukheshu vigata spriya vitaraga bhaya krodha stitadhi muniruchyate. That sage is said to be of settled wisdom, steady in wisdom. Remember what wisdom we are talking about. It's not that he has memorized the Gita and remembers all the 700 verses perfectly. Not that. It means the person realizes, I am Brahman, and it's absolute clarity effortlessly available to that person all the time. That's enlightenment. What happens to him? Dukkheshu anudvigna mana. How is it different from us? This person will be unshaken in sorrow. Sorrow will come because of past karma, just as it comes to us, to that person also, to that particular body and mind also, sorrow will come. All enlightened persons, they seem to suffer more than others. So suffering will come, whether physical problems or people will insult them or whatever. All kinds of problems may come and will come. But the difference is, this person is completely unshaken, completely untouched by sorrow. Because this person is rooted in something which cannot be shaken anymore. Dukkheshu anudvigna mana. Realizing oneself to be the infinite self, the problems of the world sweep over the surface. The 10,000 feet of water up and the ocean beneath is undisturbed. Storms are on the surface. I told you the story of the camel and the old woman who was beating a tin box to scare away the camel. And the camel said, so many big war drums were beaten on my back when in my youth when I was a war camel. And this little box is not going to scare me. Similarly, the Swami said, I am that infinite existence on which universes are created and destroyed. Will a tummy ache scare me? No. Dukkheshu anudvigna mana. So many stories I've seen. You don't have to go up to the level of being an enlightened person. Even a little practice of spirituality saves you from sorrow. Swalpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. This is Sanskrit saying. Even a little practice of the spiritual path saves you from great fear. Protects you from great fear. I mean, I can give so many examples. I remember Swami Bhuteshanandaji Maharaj, who was the 12th president of the order, and I had the chance to, for 1 year, to watch him closely, because every day I used to go to offer pranams, salutations to him, and there would be Q&A, question answers, and those Q&A, they have been published recently in Bengali, and somebody's translating into English too, I think. Asim Maharaj, yes. So I was privileged to be present in those question answers, and we had the sense that this person is an enlightened person. So there were so many funny and profound moments. Once he is saying, he was old, he was 98 years old, but the mind so clear. Once somebody asked him, people would ask, "How are you today, Swami?" Once he had a high fever, so somebody asked, "How are you today, Swami?" And his reply was very interesting. He said, and he had a long drawl, he would speak, he was very, very slow in everything. He would say, "Why do you talk about the body so much?" Another time somebody asked him, "How are you today, Swami?" And this does not work in English, but it's in Bengali. He said in a whole litany of a list of problems. How his forehead is throbbing, how the eyes are itching, and the shoulder aches are aching, and the elbows are the tingling, and the knees are, and so on. There are specific Bengali words for each kind of pain. Bengali is a bit of a hypochondriac, so there are Bengali words for the different kinds of pains you get in different joints of the body. And he was a master of the language. So he recited the whole series, and with absolutely the precise word, the kind of pain you get in this joint and that joint, and so we were listening to it, and he finished, and then he said, "But I am not complaining. I am happy with all of this." And it's so touching and such a wonderful reminder. One transcends sorrow. Dukkheshu anudvigna manaha. Sukheshu vigatas priya. In pleasure, when we have good situation, happy, with friends and prosperity and health, our tendency is somehow to hold on to that. Because that's what we want, and that should remain as long as possible. Impossible, nothing will remain. There is this story of a Buddhist monk who came to a kingdom. The king said, "Oh, venerable sir, I'm happy you are visiting, but my life is full of sorrow. You see, the rains have failed, and the people are starving, and the minister is incompetent, and the enemies gather on my borders. And the prince upon whom I had so much hope is turned out to be a wastrel. He is not interested in being a responsible king. Just wastes his time hunting and things like that." And the Buddhist monk said, O king, this too shall pass." The king said, "Okay." Years and years later, the monk was again on his wanderings. He passed through that kingdom, and the king called him to the court, much older now. And the king said, and the Buddhist monk said, "How are you, O your majesty?" And the king said, "Oh, much better since we last met. There have been plentiful rains by your grace, and there's plentiful harvest. People are happy. The enemies, we have made treaties with the enemies, and they are our friends now. And we have replaced the ministers. They're competent people now. And the prince has turned out to be such a fine young man. I'm sure he's going to be a good king after me. So things are good." And the Buddhist monk said, "O king, this too shall pass." All things which come together will at one time fall apart again. So, even the most pleasant circumstances, we tend to cling to them. The enlightened person does not. William Blake's beautiful poetry. He who kisses the winged joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise. The joy, the pleasure, the happiness, it flies. You cannot hold it on. If you try to hold it, it will die. It will no longer remain a pleasure or a joy. It comes, gives you happiness, and disappears. And he lets it go. He kisses it as it flies. That person lives in eternity's sunrise. Is always living in sunrise. William Blake. The enlightened person, Sukheshu Vigatas Priya, does not hold on to, oh Arjuna, like you cling to things, nice things, He does not cling. Swami Brahmananda, sitting in meditation, I think it was in Kashi, Benares, he was wandering as an incognito monk, like many in India, even today. Somebody saw him and felt this is a really holy person. It's cold there. So he came and put a shawl around Swami Brahmananda. Swami Brahmananda did not react, sat quietly. After some time, this petty thief who was sort of hanging around and saw this monk who seemed to be in deep meditation, sneaked up and his expensive shawl, pulled it off his body and it made good his escape. And Swami Brahmananda quietly watched. I heard the story about another wandering monk in our Benares ashram, our ashram. He used to come to that ashram. Our monks would like him very much. He would mostly be naked. And most people thought he was crazy or insane, but he was a very evolved spiritual soul. Now, the story goes, people from all over India visit Benares. So a Rani, a queen, was visiting Benares, and she was being taken in a palanquin. I don't know if you've seen a palanquin. They're like a box, and there are people who carry you. If you are a high-born woman especially, you are not supposed to be in public. So you are carried around in this box. And there are bearers, the people who will lift you and carry you along. Noblemen, and also they would go in that way. So she was being carried around in a palanquin, and she sees this holy man, and she has heard about this holy man. And she tells one of her attendants, go and cover him with a expensive shawl. And this person, the attendant, goes and says, the Queen Mother, she has sent this shawl as a gift to your holiness, and he covers him. And the Swami was standing there and sort of shivering in the cold, didn't acknowledge it. The next few days later, again when the Queen was being taken along in a palanquin, and she sees again standing naked in the cold. She says, maybe somebody stole it or something, She told her guards to go and inquire, what happened? The guards go and inquire. The Queen Mother is asking, Holy Sir, where is your shawl? Where is the shawl which we put upon you a few days back? And the Swami snapped back at him. In rustic Hindi it works best, but in English also. He said to the guards, am I a policeman? I'm going to guard your shawl. He never even had the feeling that it's mine, it's been given to me. Here is a body, somebody came and put something on this body. Somebody came and took something away from this body. That's it. Well, what's it to me? Sukheshu vigata spriya. There is no spriya, no hunger for hanging on to what is nice and pleasant. Absolutely untouched. Therefore, Vita raga bhaya krodha transcends. There is no fear, there is no hankering, there is no anxiety, anger. Raga is hankering. Bhaya is fear, anxiety. Krodha is anger. This person has transcended all fear, all anxiety, all anger, all hankering. There's nothing in the world which he wants. Nothing that the world can provide him which he wants. Such a person is said to be of established wisdom. The next Krishna says, Yas sarvatra nabhisneha tat tat prapya shubha shubham nadhinandati nadveshti tasya prajna pratisthita. When, it's a continuation of the earlier thought. By the stream of karma, good things will happen to you, and bad things will also happen to you. It will come. Whatever we have done, the effects are sure to come in the stream of time. The effects of the causes we have set in motion in ancient lives long forgotten, they are coming to us. Even now they are coming to us. Don't think that you are just here, just like that. You chose to be in a Vedanta retreat. You are here because you deserve it. Even something like reading a book. When I came to the United States, I was packing all the books I had in the monastery and shipping them over to the United States. And then I had to drag them all the way again from California to New York. Now, when I was packing all those books, I was reading Swami Vivekananda. In my daily reading, I came across this line. Swami Vivekananda says, a fool may buy all the books in a library, but he will read only the ones he deserves to. What our karma is, only that much we will get. In the stream of time, our results of our karma keep coming to us. But this person, we get elated when something nice happens. We get depressed and angry when something bad happens, when we ask, why me? Notice we always ask when something bad happens, why me? When something nice happens, we never ask, why me? Somebody wins the lottery and nobody asks, oh, it's a tragedy. What did I do to deserve this? Why me? No, never ask. So this person, Nabhinandati na dveshti. When something bad happens, doesn't say, why me? When something good happens, is not overjoyed or excited. Okay, good. Something bad happened, acknowledges, yes, it's unpleasant. Fine. There's nothing wrong in it. That person, how is it possible? How is it possible? Something mildly bad, we can put up with it. Something serious, like say Sri Ramakrishna gets throat cancer, or something bad happens. Pavari Baba, I think, was bitten by a cobra, and he said, "It's a cobra is a messenger from my beloved." How can you do that actually? It's difficult. You can do it because this person, he's seeing the same existence everywhere. This person is seeing the same oneness everywhere. That's why one sees, one does not react to the pleasant by hankering, one does not react to the unpleasant by why me? Because the reality behind the pleasant and the unpleasant is the same existence, consciousness, bliss. Na bhinandati, na dveshti. Such a person's wisdom is well established. There is a tract here where Sri Krishna says, how are we shaken from our wisdom? Which it does not happen to the enlightened person. So how are we shaken from our wisdom? He gives several verses here. I just recite a little bit to that, about that, and then we'll bring it to a conclusion and go into the Q&A. Krishna says, Yada sangharate chayam kurmangani vasarvasha indriyani indriyarthebhya tasya prajna pratisthita. When a tortoise, and there are a lot of these little tortoises in the Central Park in the lake there. So if you try to touch them, they'll withdraw their limbs inside, into the shell. In the same way, the yogi of perfect wisdom, in the midst of temptations also, completely unaffected, can easily withdraw. Is not aware. It's just like a tortoise withdrawing its limbs. Just withdraw. You can't do that. We get entangled. When we say temptation with a capital T, oh my God. That person is just withdraws and it's nothing to him. Because that person is fully established in the existence within. Remember what Krishna taught Arjuna. We read that earlier. Fully established in the Atman, the pure consciousness within. Now you can control the intellect, the mind and the senses. Those can be withdrawn from the respective objects. We cannot. We are so entangled with the mind and the senses that whatever the senses and they bring in, whatever the mind thinks, we immediately become entangled with that. As if that's the reality. Forgetting our own reality. So this person can withdraw. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Krishna makes a very subtle psychological point here. It's the difference between this person, the enlightened person, and the yogi who is a practitioner. As a discipline, one may abstain. I want it, but I am controlling myself. That's a discipline. This enlightened person is not like that. What's the difference? Krishna says in the case of a person who's disciplined, the desire still remains within. But that person does not put it into effect. So what the desire for sense organs, sense objects is there. But the person does not act on it on the basis of willpower, holds himself back on the basis of willpower. But inside he says rasa, taste is there, the taste for those things. And often that leads to lapses of willpower, and we call that person has had a fall. Because he was restraining himself by force, and then when the restraint breaks down, a fall. Sometimes it's greater than what it was earlier. So people who are, say, who are going into the AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous, they're trying to practice that and withhold themselves. And you have so many stories of sliding back and how to prevent that sliding back. Whereas the difference between that and the enlightened person is rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Literally it means having once seen that ultimate reality, the pure consciousness, existence, bliss within, even the taste for worldly objects disappears. So this person is no longer in any danger of slipping back into entanglement. The person who's doing it by force of will is always perpetually has to be alert. And one passes through a stretch like that in spiritual life. But this person is not like that. Enlightened person, even the subtle taste within the mind has disappeared, having seen the ultimate reality. Somebody bowed down to Swami Brahmananda and said, "Oh Swami, you are great. You have given up all the temptations of life in your pursuit of God realization." And he bowed down to him. And Swami Brahmananda immediately bowed even lower to that person. "You are greater than me. You have given up God for the paltry temptations of the world." He actually said, "You have given up a diamond for shards of glass." So you are great. Your renunciation is far greater than mine. If we do not give up the subtle taste, what happens? Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschita indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham mana. Even if a person is striving in spiritual life, we're trying. But what happens is, if the senses are not controlled, if the mind is not controlled, then the desires, they will sweep us away. Like a boat helplessly being swept away in storm waters. Even if a person, he says, Vipaschita, a person well learned in Vedanta, still makes mistakes, still slips and falls into entanglement. Why? Does something that is quite against his or her spiritual goal. Why? This happens all the time. Because the problem is not at the level of Vedanta. The problem is not even at the level of the intellect. The problem is that senses have not been controlled. They sweep away such a person. Tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matpara vashehi yasya indriyani tasya prajna pratisthita. Exactly what he told Arjuna later on in 3rd chapter. Here also Krishna says, first of all control the sense organs. Then the mind. Settle the mind upon me, the inner self. The same pure existence consciousness place. Then only your wisdom will be steady. How is wisdom lost? Dhyayato vishayan pungsa sangasteshu upajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho vijayate krodhat bhavati sammoha sammohat smriti vibhrama smriti bhrangshad buddhinasho buddhinashat pranashyati. We sometimes hear of the eightfold step of yoga. Yama, niyama, and asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Eightfold steps towards enlightenment. These are the eightfold steps to more than 8 steps, I think. The steps to destruction. The downward spiral. What happens? Dhyayato vishayan. If you continuously dwell on sense objects, what happens? Sangasteshu upajayate. A taste for them develops in the mind. What color you dip the mind in, what color you dip the cloth in, the cloth will take that color. So the senses are revealing something to you and you continuously let the mind dwell in that, what the senses are bringing home. Then the mind takes on that color. When the mind takes on that color, the next step is Sangat Sanjayate Kama. That taste which develops in the mind, it's nice. The next step is, I want it. First of all, you did not know about it. Now you know about it. Now you know about it and you keep thinking about it. A taste develops. It's nice. After it's nice comes, I want it. Advertisers know all about this. This is a very psychology of advertisement. They repeat it ad nauseum to you again and again and again in the middle of your favorite sports programs or news programs or whatever. 1,000 times repeated, and they are making you meditate. Not on God or not on Brahman. You're meditating on Pepsi or something. And the taste for that develops in the mind. And as it develops in the mind, a desire arises. I want it. And then, if the desire is frustrated in any way, oh no, I'm a spiritual seeker, stop it. I won't do that. At that level, what happens? Kamat krodho vijayate. The desire is converted into rage or irritation. Often you will find, sometimes spiritual seekers are very irritable people. This guy was nice and relaxed and fun to be with. And now that he has taken up Vedanta and yoga or whatnot, he snaps at me. What has happened is, the person is restraining himself in one front, and that restraint, if it is not on a spiritual basis, if it's like a bull-headed discipline, it immediately converts desire into anger. And where will the anger go? It will lash out at people next to him, people who have nothing to do with. The problem is internal. But the people who bear the brunt of that anger are people around. In Bengali, there's a funny story. Why did the little girl kick the cat? Because her mum spanked her. Why did her mum spank her? Because her mum works as a maidservant in some rich person's house, and the owner of the house, the lady of the house, scolded her. Why did the lady of the house scold her? Because her husband misbehaved with her after coming back from office. Why did the husband misbehave with her? Because his boss scolded him. So the poor cat got a kick because at one point the boss scolded somebody else. In the same way, kamat krodha vijayate. Flashes of anger come when there is forceful discipline. And then what happens? Anger. Krodhat bhavati sammoho. Anger creates a veil of delusion. A veil of delusion. And that veil of delusion leads to smriti brahma. Memory. The memory of spiritual teaching. You studied. Vedanta retreat. Yoga practice. This book and that book. So many things have attended. So many symposium, workshop. Nothing works, Swami, when I'm angry. Obviously. Because anger dilutes. It creates a cloud which obscures your memory. And when memory is lost, what happens? Buddhi nasha. The insight, the spiritual insight you got, you cannot put it into practice anymore. It's lost to you, for the moment at least. Buddhi nasha pranashyati. Literally it means destroyed. You're not destroyed, but your spiritual progress is obstructed. You lose that much of spiritual progress. So this is the causality, the links, one after another, what happens? It leads to delay or loss in spiritual progress. It's a very nice chain, you see, what Sri Krishna has set up. And he says, in conclusion, Raga dvesha viyuktaistu vishayan indriyaischaran atma vashyir vidheyatma prasadam adhigacchati. So, what happens is, this person who has got a disciplined mind, who restrains the sense organs and the mind from the beginning, does not fall into this cycle of deliberating about sense objects, then developing a taste for them, then blooming into desire being obstructed, then anger flashing, and then anger obscuring the teachings which you have got, and so on, who prevents this chain. And with this balanced mind, with this serene mind, interacts with the objects of the senses. Arjuna has asked, how does this person talk? How does this person walk? How does this person sit? That's what's being answered now. Exactly like us. He also eats, drinks, talks with people, with nice people, with annoying people. He walks in and talks in the same world which we inhabit, but is not disturbed by that world because of being established in the self, and from that vantage point controlling the senses, the mind and intellect. Atma vashyai vidheyatma prasadam adhigacchati. Attains serenity. Prasada here means serenity or tranquility. But prasada also means the food which is offered to the Lord And I see that the food has already arrived. I think prasad has already arrived. Yes. So I'll bring the talk to a close here, and we'll go into Q&A. We'll go into question and answer. Should we go